Of course, hi, good evening. It's a lovely evening to everybody that is tuned in right about now, watching Ubuntu channel on Facebook, Ubuntu channel on YouTube, it's Ubuntu channel, and not forgetting on Twitter as well. You can get us at Ubuntu channel. Now, do not just watch or do not be that selfish to just watch alone, but invite your friends, invite your family, invite your neighbors to watch along with you. How do you do that? Simply send that Facebook link, send that YouTube link, retweet with a quote that Twitter link to all everybody that is following you, to all of the people that are on your space, so that they also can get informed that Ubuntu channel is live. And today is a Wednesday, the 4th of May 2022. This is Meet Your Leaders. I am your host, Sannie Banda, to take you through these thrilling minutes as we get to talk about digital media siege. All right. So yesterday, the 3rd of May, was Journalist Day, or let me say, was the Media Day, as the media was celebrating World Press Freedom Day. We saw different medias marching and also going through to celebrate their day. We saw different meetings being held, and we saw different workshops being held in commemoration of the World Press Freedom Day. Today, obviously, we saw the president having a media conference with the media, where he was simply engaging the media, or he was having a chit chat with the media, and we saw different media representation right there, asking the president for certain things that he need to consider, because also he made a promise when he was in the opposition, and they were asking how far with what you promised. Today on the program, my guest is Jane Chirwa. Now, Jane Chirwa is programs coordinator at MISA Zambia, that is Media Institutes of Southern Africa, and not forgetting, she is a member of ZAMEC. Miss Chilwa, good evening and welcome to the program. Miss Chilwa.
Good evening to you, and thank you very much. So, Mr. Zambia, yes, is a member of the Media Liaison Committee, and my organization, MISA, is a member of the Media Liaison Committee. And right now, we are in the process of establishing the Zambian Media Council through the bill that we've submitted to the government of Zambia that was brought about through wide consultation with the media.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for finding time to be with us, so that we can get to discuss this very important topic that borders on the media. Of course, the theme for this year's Press Freedom Day was talking about journalism or media under digital siege. Obviously, in my own interpretation, I would say we have seen different platforms coming in to give a question to the media or to the journalists, because somebody has a phone out there and they get to post anything on the digital platform, which makes the work for the journalist almost impossible or hard, because they have to come up with tools or a way on how they can identify, or a way on how they can report that which is truthful, factful, kind of in a way that hasn't been reported by these people that have different digital platforms. To start with, obviously, I would love you to share with us and everybody that is watching, what is the state of the media in Zambia?
Okay, thank you very much. With the coming of the new government, there have been positive pronouncements. The elections are behind us, so the level of competition has died down a little bit, and so it has become quiet even for the media. But also with the positive pronouncements coming from the president, we see some level of improvement regards the levels of freedom of expression because of the pronouncement that the president made. We have seen, very drastic reduction in terms of cadres attacking media. I think at the beginning, when the government was just settling in, we saw some cadres trying to harass some private media houses, not allowing them to feature the opposition. But as soon as the government set its foot down through the Ministry of Information that they would not support such lawlessness, we saw actually that reduction really take full effect. So that is good in terms of the landscape. But of course, economically, there still continue to be some few challenges here and there because the COVID-19 is still with us and its impact on the economic outlook of Zambia was quite dire. So it's not going to die out soon. So there's still that challenge. And then, of course, we had the issue of the newsprint VAT being introduced. That is something that Mr. Zambia campaigned against some time back, and we were surprised, taken aback that that particular tax was reintroduced. But other than that, we continue to operate under, oppressive laws, and that is what is giving us a big headache. So, with the assurances that came from the presidency today, that things like the IBA Act will be reviewed, and the ATI enacted, and then also issues to do with media self-regulation are something that the president guaranteed. We are positive that things are going to be better, but we are operating under a very oppressive legal regime in the country because the number of laws that are impacting media freedom and freedom of expression continue to increase. And among the latest are the Cyber Security and Cyber Crimes Act, of which we were very hopeful that it would just be, done away with. But of course, there is a discussion that we are having now, and so we hope for the best as we look at the cyber law and see how we can prevent cybercrime, but not deter freedom of expression.
All right. Before I come to the many laws, obviously, that make the work of the journalist maybe hard or difficult to execute because they are against the journalists. Let me come to, yes, the environment that the media is operating in. When we talk about the commercial format of the media, yes, you've mentioned the COVID-19. Obviously, it has become practically impossible for small medias privately owned to survive or to continue being sustained because adverts are not coming in. Companies that were advertising with them have shut down or they are on partial lockdown, or maybe they have reduced on production and even retrenched some manpower or things to do with that. What are the best reforms, or how best can government help in seeing to it that during these difficult economic times, the media still thrives and continues to offer better checks and balances, and also continues to be the link between the poor citizen and the leaders that are in power? All right, we seem to have a problem right there with our guest. But in case you have just tuned in, this is Meet Your Leaders on Ubuntu channel. Now, this program comes your way every Wednesdays from 21 hours to 22 hours, and we get to give you a platform to come through and also be a part of the program by commenting on the different platforms that you are watching us on. It might be on Facebook, which is Ubuntu channel. It may be on YouTube, it is Ubuntu channel, or obviously on Twitter, which is Ubuntu channel. So all that you have to do is simply like our Facebook page, get to like it, share it, and invite other people to like it too, and also to make sure that they get to follow us. Then not forgetting also share with us or share with your friends out there by telling them to go to YouTube and get to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Apart from subscribing, they can hit on the bell, and on the bell, when they hit it, make sure that you get to click on all, so that every time we post, every time that we are live on the program like this, obviously you get notified to say Ubuntu channel is live, and this is what they are discussing this particular evening. And on Twitter you can also do the same. Follow us and hit on the bell so that you are also a part of Ubuntu channel. Remember, Ubuntu is a channel for you. It's not a channel for me, but it's a channel for you. Therefore, we would love you to be a part of us by simply following us on all our digital platforms. That is what we ask you to do. All right, so still continuing with the program as we are talking about media and digital siege. So like I said in the preamble, yesterday media was celebrating its day, World Press Freedom Day, where we saw different journalists around the country commemorating the day, and of course getting to celebrate the day. It was celebrated under the theme of media under digital siege, which is we have seen the coming in of people reporting anything and everything in a manner that they feel like, just because they have a smartphone and they feel like posting what they feel like, they will post that. All right, they hear a rumor, whatever that they do, they decide to post that, and then that is taken as news by different media readers, different digital media readers right there. So this is we have seen journalism being under siege, because journalists now have to prove professionally that this story which you saw being posted by maybe this member of the public is not true, but here are the facts about that story. Jen, thank you so much for coming back. And maybe we can get ahead with the question. I don't know if you got it, or maybe I can rephrase it.
Thank you very much. Apologies.
It's all right.
Yes, please do.
Can I rephrase the question, or you got it?
I didn't get it because I lost connection at one point.
No, okay. All right. So, okay, I was saying, what measures, or how can the government help out private media or the private media owners to sustain their businesses during these hard economic conditions? As we know that adverts are not floating in, obviously because of COVID, and some companies that were advertising with these media houses no longer have the budget that they had before being hit by COVID. How can the media be helped to continue thriving, and we continue seeing a lot of media houses maybe mushrooming and continue with production? All right. We still seem to have a problem. Yeah, our guest still seems to have a problem with connection, but however, the program still continues as we continue talking about, journalism or media under digital siege. Obviously, we get to talk about, maybe let me get to talk about digital rights, talking about the opportunities and challenges in the practice of journalism in Zambia. Or maybe before that, like I said, you are invited to come through the program and share with us your views and your different comments and your questions. Jen, are you still there? Okay, all right. We've lost Jen. Let's go on a very short break, and then when we come back, I come and share with you. Obviously, like I said, we get to share with you digital rights, talking about opportunities and challenges in the practice of journalism in Zambia. This is in the wake of digital safety, digital rights, and obviously practicing civic space. Let's go on a very short break, and then we'll be back on the other side. Good evening.
Ubuntu is a tradition that man, or indeed a human being, is born in. Naturally, we are born with Ubuntu. We live with it. We come into this world with that.
All right. Thank you so much for still staying with us. Emmanuel, thank you for that message. Good to know that you are watching from Lusaka, Zambia. Make sure that you get to invite your friends and family also so that they can get informed about media under digital siege, which is the topic of discussion that we have this particular evening. All right, looks like we have our guest back. Let's see if we can engage her and get to maybe another question. Hi, Miss Chilwa, are you there? All right, so still having problems right there, but let's get talk about digital rights, opportunities and challenges in the practice of journalism. Now, there are three questions that maybe one might ask himself or herself as we are dealing with the digital platform or the digital rights. And obviously, the questions will be, or the concerns will be like cyber attacks, is mostly done on female journalists, talking about threats of different harm that can be done to them. Obviously, time and again, people have noticed, or you have noticed, that female journalists, mostly on social media, they face a lot of discrimination. They face a lot of bullying just because they are female. But maybe before getting into that, let's go see if we can bring in Pamela and get to discuss a few issues to do with the media. Pamela, hi, good evening.
Good evening, Lance. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
All right, good to have you on the program. Perhaps we can also have a chat on what we are discussing today, owing to the fact that you are a seasoned journalist.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, so
What would you
where
like?
to where to start from? Obviously, I would love to start from ZAMEC, or maybe access to information bill. Um, all right, yeah. I think let's first talk about journalists, and then maybe that's when we can go to access to information bill. ZAMEC, obviously, let's talk about how it affects journalists, or how it affects journalism, those that are practicing print, those that are in print media, those that are in radio, and those that are obviously working for TV stations. How does ZAMEC affect them?
Oh, okay. Jenno is obviously the best person to talk about ZAMEC and how it affects journalists. But from the little that I know, I understand that it will be an institution that will regulate the media in Zambia, and it's going to, if it's implemented the way I've seen the documents so far, it's going to bring sanity to the media space. Um, it has It specifically addresses each section of the media: radio stations, print media, broadcasting, digital journalism, even individual journalists, what they should do. It describes the ethics, the do's and don'ts. If a journalist offends the public, it also addresses how that can be resolved. There's a process that has been uh, put in there in the ZAMEC bill. So it will bring sanity to the media. And it's also going to clearly define who the journalist is, because at the moment we have a lot of people, what we call Al Qaeda in the media, we call them Al Qaeda. Everybody just treats them as journalists. Some of them are not. They are just the individual people that are pretending to be journalists. And then we have every Jim and Jack with a smartphone thinking they're a journalist. So they do wrong things most of the time. I can see Jenny's back. Laugh.
All right, we call these people that have smartphones and report everything despite not knowing the basic things a journalist is supposed to do. We call them citizen journalists because obviously they have an interest in it, but they report wrongly. Jen, good to have you back. Looks like we are having serious internet challenges. Mm. It seems like
Okay. Apologies. Keep on going off and on.
mhm. It's all right. We understand. Sometimes the internet can be trying. All right, but with Pamela, I was discussing the impact of
Very true.
ZAMEC on. Yeah, I was discussing the impact of ZAMEC on radio journalists, print journalists, and also broadcasting or TV journalists. Perhaps you can shed more light. What is this ZAMEC? There are people that are listening to it for the very first time. They don't even know what ZAMEC stands for. Okay. Looks like we really have a serious network challenge right there with Jen. But anyway, Pamela, let's get to recall you back. Yeah. Okay. Jen, are you here?
Yeah, I keep
Anyway,
on losing my connection, but I'm now here.
okay. I was talking about ZAMEC. Many people or maybe journalists that haven't seen the ZAMEC bill don't understand what ZAMEC is. What does it stand for? What good or bad does it bring to the media fraternity?
Thank you very much. So when you look at the ZAMIC bill, the original one that the journalists came up with, it is meant to establish a media regulation body in terms of ethics. So the model that was picked up was the one like for us, where the regulatory mechanism is established by law, but then in terms of the regulations for the ethical conduct of the journalist, it's supposed to be done in-house. That is the regulation of the profession. So there shouldn't be any penalties embedded in the law, any imprisonment or any punitive measures coming out in the law. The only thing is the formation of the mechanism, and the regulations are supposed to guide. So that is basically why the ZAMECA was put in place. It was for that reason, to ensure that there is ethical conduct, professional conduct among the journalists. Um, in terms of the advantages is that you're able to improve the quality of journalism and knowledge on actually media ethics. What would be the downside of having a law in place? It's that, of course, when you have a law in place, it now goes in, rests in the hands of legislators, and legislators can change that law at any time. So maybe even if we said we wouldn't want for them to have punitive measures in it, you might just end up having the punitive measures. For instance, right now, actually, we were expecting that starting from last year, even before the PF came out of power, that they would enact the ZAMEC law bill as it was drafted by the journalists and by, as suggested. We had engaged drafters that assisted us, and we came up with the layman's bill. But whenever it went on the other side, it came out a different bill. And so that is the fear that everyone has regarding putting in place self-regulation that is also backed by law. But there are countries that have such laws that are a mechanism in terms of ethics that is backed by law. We have Kenya, for instance, and it is working out well. So we can borrow from such examples in terms of how that works. But of course, there are different schools of thought when it comes to self-regulation. There are others that say actually self-regulation must not have any law at all, but others say you can create a hybrid based on the context you're operating in. Just create the mechanism through the law, but the journalists regulate themselves through their own peers who have vast knowledge in media ethics, and they're able to do that. So that is the scenario when it comes to the ZAMEC and where it lies. It is supposed to also weed out people that are imposters. They go to functions and say they come from this and that media house, and really it is just a way of getting transport refund, eating free food. And even the president has mentioned that, you know these people, but how come you don't, you know, bring them out? Yeah, so I think it is meant to create that level of sanity in the profession as well, so that they will bring respect to the field of journalism. Because the typical journalist who comes from a media house won't behave in a very funny way. There are certain rogues who just, people who just come in and they will pick food and be chewing and doing all sorts of things. They are not really journalists, they're not writing for any media house, and they are the noisiest whenever you try to control traffic and everything. So really, the need for us to have something that regulates the practice of journalism and being respect to the profession is important. But how we go about it and how the goodwill is from those that are entrusted with this onerous task in the government institutions, then really becomes important that they must address the aspirations of the Zambian journalists, because when they came up with that particular law, it was supposed to go like that because they know what is in their profession. But unfortunately, over and over, this particular bill keeps on changing. We were thinking that with the new government, that would stop based on the submissions based on the policy pronouncement by the presidency. But unfortunately, we still continue to see the same unfolding of events where the drafters are coming up with something that is very anti-media freedom. At the end of the day, it may criminalize journalism.
Okay, Jen, it looks like the ZAMEC bill. It looks like the ZAMEC bill only concentrates on print, radio, and broadcasting journalists. We have journalists that are correspondents. We have freelance journalists. How does this bill, when enacted into law, affect them? And how can you tell that these are not masqueraders but are real journalists?
Okay, that is wonderful. So usually when like the original ZAMEC bill, it is meant to get registered every media house that's operating in Zambia. And so it will be very easy to also know who are the journalists that are affiliated to them. So if there are those that are outside, then definitely begin to see that there is a disparity in terms of those journalists who are going to events, because their media houses are affiliated, would be expected to be affiliates of the ZAMEC. So So that is how you'll be able to begin the process of weeding out those that are, masquerading, for lack of a better words, as journalists, when really the intention is just to go and get a transport refund, eat free food, then knock off and go back home, you know.
All right. My co-host is here. Good evening, Mr. Kabwe. How you doing today?
Good evening. Fine, thank you. How are you?
Well, I am all right. Thank you. All right. Good to have you along the way, underway the program. Good that you could make it.
Apologies. I was on movie TV and I don't know. It's kind of they enjoyed the whole thing and we overshot the interview.
Okay, great. Anyway, so we are discussing media siege. In fact, media under digital siege, and obviously, I know you have a burning question to ask our guest right here over what has been pertaining, especially with the introduction of these online medias and the serious spread of false news.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe Jen. Good evening. If she can.
Good evening.
Yeah. If Jen could tell us about the need for us to ensure that politicians don't play a part in in the siege that the media has at the moment.
Thank you very much. So I was looking up actually the word siege when it came out. And actually, what it means is that, being overtaken, kind of like, being surrounded or something like that in the terms of military terms. So now, when you talk about journalism being under siege, which means that it's surrounded by quite a number of things that are, causing it not to operate properly. It is affecting its ability to be able to deliver its mandate. And one of them is that, of course, we have online platforms right now that are competing with media. The same content that you would want to share in a newspaper the next day, there is just an ordinary citizen with a phone that can also disseminate it. So that means that journalism is under siege. And
Okay, looks like our guest still continues to have internet problems or challenges. Right. Um, Mr. Kabwe,
Yes.
let's get perhaps as we wait for Jen to come back, let's get to have a chit chat around journalism in today's world or in today's thing. Obviously, we know that this time around or these days, due to the introduction of social media and people creating so many accounts on social media, there's been a lot of disinformation, misinformation, hate speech being spread across, and maybe a little bit of malinformation. How can we best, combat such as journalists? There is a false story that maybe we have seen being published, and as journalists, we want to counter attack that story with facts. How can one go about that? Is it possible? Can one do that?
Well, the best is to ensure that we enact access to information laws so that journalists are able to get verified information from various government bodies. There is this perception by politicians that the access to information law will actually make journalists maybe go beyond certain parameters. But it is actually a very good panacea to fake news. So if you have access to information laws, there will be no need for journalists to use hook and crook to get information. They are able to go to an office, get verified information, and be able to use it to write their stories. So that is a commendable legal way of addressing fake news. But also the other issue would be for us as journalists not to compete with these unpopular and unethical social media pages by going beyond politics. If we can go to a rural area, get the voices of the voiceless, have certain angles around the sustainable development goals, bring out stories that will interest people beyond politics, or even get those stories and ask politicians to respond to them, it will really make a difference. The problem is that the conventional media is trying to compete with these media outlets which are not even registered, and it's making it difficult for the public to distinguish between the two. And the public would rather go for those sensational spicy media channels where they add in certain things. They would say more things about Mr. Banda, where he was
All right. Looks like I've also lost
last
Mr.
night, and all those
Okay.
that can bring change in our society.
Awesome. Now, like in the rise of social media, propaganda has been also on the rise, and we have seen many political actors using social media to propagate things and obviously to champion hate speech and all these other things. And a professional journalist, before maybe publishing a story, should verify the information that they have. So, for example, if I go to person A and they give me information about person B, obviously I should first verify if that information that person A has given me about person B is correct and real. And also I should do a fact checking to see if obviously this information is rich with truth. And also in the wake of a scoop, I want to scoop. I want to be the first one, or I want my media house to be the first media to publish this story. Don't you think verification and fact checking would be a very long process, and somebody would scoop you and making your story as stale, or maybe making it soft news because somebody has broken it? Do we really need to go through verification and fact checking for a story to run?
Professional journalists
It is the job of a journalist to always make sure you verify.
Okay, Jen, you can come in. Obviously, Mr. Kabwe will come in as well, but Jen, you can come in.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I keep on going on and off. I don't know what's wrong with the Livingstone internet. But verifying is part of journalism. We have to make sure that whatever information we come across, we take it with a pinch of salt. Verification is very important in terms of spelling, the use of the correct words, the correct figures. Verification in terms of the spelling of the different names, either of places, either of persons, countries. That whole process is part of verifying in journalism. And the process of verifying does not end at just ensuring that you check if the information is the truth. The process of verifying includes talking to multiple sources, reading multiple documents. As you are getting this diversity in knowledge, you are able to begin to get closer to the truth. And that is why even democracy is something that is a preferred model, for instance, for governance, because you are able to get diversity of source, and from that you're able to pick up best ideas. So it's the same with journalism. You gather as much information as possible, and in that process of doing that, you're able to get as closest to the truth as possible.
Jen, here is a scenario. Let's say I witness an accident, God forbid, somewhere around Great East Road. Or maybe I don't witness it. Somebody calls the media house, calls the newsroom to say, I have witnessed an accident. Okay, too bad Jen has gone. Maybe Kabwe, you can take this one. Somebody calls the newsroom to make a claim that I have witnessed this accident, a fatal accident, and the cause of this accident is maybe overspeeding, or maybe the road has got so many potholes. And then you have to do a fact finding before publishing that story, and at the same time you want it to be a scoop. You want to be the first media house to run this story before anybody else runs it. How do you marry the two in making sure that you have done your fact finding and it's your scoop?
Well, it's important for journalists to realize that reputation is a key component of our sustenance. So if you want to rush and jeopardize your reputation by publishing false information or broadcasting false information, it will kill not only your people, your audience, but also the advertisers. So it's important that we are a bit patient to ensure that we can quickly get verification of the stories that we want to publish, because at the end of the day, if we don't publish verified information, we risk losing our audiences, we risk losing our advertisers and people that may have had certain connections to our media houses. So it's important that people can quickly verify information before it is published. And you see, the scope is an important component in the media, especially that at the moment we have these social media outlets. But people should be able to establish the fact that commendable and reliable media houses are those that people can go to in order for them to access information. So we need to ensure that we prioritize verification of information so that the public are given proper information which can be relied upon.
All right, very insightful right there. Jen, good to have you back. And hopefully you will be able to pick on this one. The media has been crying for for self-regulation. The media wants to regulate itself, but how do they want to regulate themselves? Through a law. Now, is it possible for the media to regulate themselves if this is passed on as a law in parliament to say this is a law, act number so media will self-regulate? Don't you think the government will still find a way to come in and have that invincible hand of regulating the media? All right, Henry, maybe pick it up. Is it a good idea that in media pushing for self-regulation, they have, it has to be passed as a law. Doesn't it have to be like a media's own conviction? It starts with them. So maybe as media house B, this is our policy and this is how we are going to run, and maybe these are certain things that we're going to put into place. Must it be passed as a law?
Well, in fact, that was our belief some 10 years ago, that the media should be able to, regulate themselves, and self-regulation meant that each media house would use their editorial policies to determine what they bring out, but also use their ethical guidelines, international ethical guidelines, to ensure that they don't injure any person. But over the years, we realized that there are so many imposters in the media, masqueraders that were tarnishing the image of journalists. And most of us that were, for the first process of the media regulating itself, had to acknowledge the fact that the media had been infiltrated, not only with masqueraders, but also mercenaries, people that are in the media to influence certain things and make some advocacy noise, and later get appointed, for them to be able to make political mileage. So we saw it necessary that there will be need for us to regulate the conduct of the media. We also saw a lot of politicians appointing non-media people, I mean, political parties as media directors, and those people were kind of misleading, the public, using and kind of approaches to do media work. So we believe that once we come up with the Zambia Media Council, we should be able to ensure that all political parties use professionals to do media work. The government use professionals to do media kind of work, so that everything is in context. I think there's been some kind of belief that if someone is able to speak well, they are able to articulate issues, then they can do media work, not knowing that there is more to do in terms of media research, advising whichever political party leader or the president you have, just about the things which are pertaining in the media and how to respond to them. So we believe that there will be need for us to regulate our profession. In Zambia, we had situations where the Independent Broadcasting Authority will have board members and there's only one journalist. So there are so many things which were even against the media when it comes to politics, which we needed to address. So if we have ZAMEC, then we'll be able to say no to certain appointments and ensure that the media is safe. And self-regulation doesn't mean that you come up with mechanisms to punish the media, but ensure that to protect the media, and where they are wrong, we guide them so that they do the right thing.
But don't you think that's what the government will use, because this will go through parliamentarians to obviously debate if it has to be passed as a law, that media has to self-regulate itself. Now, don't you think it will be easy for the government through the MPs as they are maybe making amendments and everything, or passing it into law, something may be deliberately introduced in it to see to it that government in one way or the other, it still has a hand or a say in this media self-regulation, just like the Law Association of Zambia Act. Yes, LAS is self-regulatory, but are the members of LAS protected? No. What LAS does is, if, let's say, for example, a practicing lawyer eats a client's money, their license will be revoked. But just because LAS is self regulated, does it mean that that lawyer will be immune to facing a punishment or judgment from the judiciary? No. LAS will only revoke that license and maybe put in other punishment forms, but the lawyer will still continue facing criminal charges or whatever charges that they have. Wouldn't this be the same case with the media, together with the media practitioners, if this self-media regulation is passed as a law?
Well, the the issue is that the idea behind ZAMEC is to ensure that, for example, if someone has offended in a movie, TV, and they complained before ZAMEC, ZAMEC should be able to arbitrate before everything is escalated, before the court. So depending on the cases, I believe that there will be several cases, a lot of cases that will be arbitrated, instead of them as being escalated, to the courts of law. So it's basically a platform for, the media to be able to make amends with people that complain against them, instead of them going to court and being charged, exorbitant fees in terms of, the fines. So this process is basically meant to protect the media and also to protect the public. Yeah, so we don't see a situation where, there'll be so many punitive measures where the courts of law will play a bigger part. We believe that there are certain cases, of course, that has to be, referred to the courts of law. But at the end of the day, we need to come up with a mechanism where certain cases, a lot of cases actually, are dealt with, at ZAMEC level, so that they are not escalated, to the courts of law.
Mm. All right, let's get to engage the public right about now. Let's get to read comments that have come through via our different platforms that we are broadcasting on. Let's get to see the messages. And then we also encourage you to also send in your question and yeah, to send your question, send your comment, and send your view. All right, Ballard Manyepa says, good evening. I think we have a big problem in Zambia, and the government need to make sure that media owners pay journalists good salaries. Journalists are now not operating professionally because they write stories to please the source and getting paid after the story is aired. All right, thank you so much, Ballard and Mr. Kabwe. I hope you've taken note of this. This is a very important concern there, and I think the president also in his today's appearance with the media in commemorating World Press Freedom Day mentioned it. All right, if we can go back to the previous message before we get to read Laura's. Okay, so Kelvin Chanda says, what regulations have come out of the conference on media control of the media? All right, Kelvin, thank you so much for the question. That will definitely be attended to. Then Laura says, a good topic. I do not have a problem with digital age when it comes to journalism. My major concern is on fake news. Ethics are violated, and this needs to be addressed for the integrity of journalists. All right, thank you so much for that question, for that. And then Freehead says, do we see the new media bill law if or when imposed to affect the freedom of speech? How do you or they intend to control it? Obviously, this is in connection with ZAMEC, the ZAMEC bill. Let's get to attend to these ones. Journalists are paid peanuts in the different media houses that they work for, and that has caused them to write stories in favor of whoever that has paid the bargain, and therefore their professionalism is not being practiced there because they've gotten something from a source and they have to write and everything good. Even if they notice something wrong, they have to write everything good about this person because he has given them money. How do we get to scrap this off? Mr. Kabwe? How do we clean the system? How do we come back to the integrity that a journalist must have?
Sure
You
that
are muted.
oh,
Okay, now I can get you.
okay, thank you. Yeah, so it was raised by the president and other stakeholders, during the meeting, and this is something that has been, a far cry for a long time. Uh, I, I'm told that some of the journalists in Zambia actually get below the minimum wage, which is very unfortunate. So there's need for us to ensure that the conditions of service for journalists are improved so that they're able to do a professional job. And I'm happy that the government has been able to, raise this issue. And the Minister of Information and Media, did promise that she's going to meet with some of the media owners to understand why they're not paying journalists, according to the economic parameters. What will be important is to remind these investors that they should not invest if they're not ready, to pay. So we need to ensure that journalists are given, good remuneration so that they're able to, sustain themselves and be able to avoid temptations when it comes to, compromise. So this core is very important, and we need to ensure that we give dignity to the media so that they're able to sustain themselves. There are so many radio stations around the country where they get, school leavers, and they're not even paying them. So we need to have a standard at least where, these reporters, news editors, and others are paid. There are certain situations where media owners just show off how wealthy they are, but they don't pay their workers, or they give them peanuts. So I think there's need for us to correct this, scenario and ensure that, these, media workers are paid. And generally speaking, there's been a lot of abuse in terms of workers in Zambia, which has had a very huge impact on the economy. So there is need for us to ensure that this is corrected for us to liberate the media from compromise.
All right. Before I allow you to attend to the other questions, let's get to accommodate Nyachi Sengu. So this is our last comment that we are getting for the show tonight. Nyachi Sengu, hi. How are you doing today?
Hey, Lance. How are you doing? And
I am
good evening, Mr. Sorry, I've forgotten the name. But yeah, of course, I've missed most of the stuff that you were discussing about. But my main worry is that I think in Zambia, I don't know whether we have some sort of a media regulatory body that takes care of all the journalists. Is there something like that? I'm sure you can give me an answer to that later on, because then the honorable Madam Chushi could use that as a drive to ensure that people don't just wake up, any day and say they're going to set up their own broadcasting services. They need to meet a certain criteria, and not only that, because all these people that they're coming to do media, people have gone through media studies, and those things did cost money. They've got their education, and therefore you need to match that with their what they're bringing to the table. And two, I think the Minister of Labor should also come in here, because I think the workers' rights are being infringed in Zambia. And, it's not only the journalists that are underpaid. A lot of people are underpaid. But anyway, today's story is about the journalists. How can we make sure that people's rights, employees' rights in Zambia are not being infringed, that we're following the International Labour Organization rights for all people? And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, in media, in journalism, there are a lot of people are specialized in different types of journalism. Some of them are, digital journalism. Some of them you do sport journalism, tabloid journalism, investigative journalism, and all that kind of stuff. My question is, would it be good for us to say, okay, when we look at Diamond TV, I think they're good at this. They'll be better off going with the president to maybe report on maybe investigating matters. Or, if you want to look at, like, you kind of look at the expertise that different type of media houses have, and you say, okay, who would be the best person to bring in when we have president, for instance, Rwandan president visiting, okay, kind of a thing, like to try and make specialisms and bring in those specialists in, so that we don't leave out anybody. But I know that, yes, for sure, most media houses will be compromised especially if they're underpaid. Those are my comments. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for coming through. All right, I know I said last, but let's get to have Gladys, and then we call it quits for tonight's contributions. Hi, Gladys, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you, and good evening, Mr. Kabwe.
Good evening, thank you.
Yes, it's a wonderful program you've brought in today, even though we've been having the internet lagging, but I hope you can come back again and educate us more about this new bill. And my question is, do we expect to see this ZAMEC bill to affect a lot of media houses, and what is expected of the media houses to be recognized, and when is it going to be effected? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Mr. Kabwe, let me give you, I think, 3 minutes. Okay. there are lots of comments even coming through. So, Mama Chikamonika says, I second you in all, and before bringing it out via media admins, have to gather enough true information about the actual news before it is published. Obviously, she's talking about misinformation that is largely on social media. I give you 3 minutes, to respond to every question that has come through Nyachisengu, Gladys, and then also via our commentary box, we had Kafuimbi Kelvin, who also asked something, and then not forgetting Laura as well asked. Maybe you can sum it up in 3 minutes.
Well, it will be difficult to remember the questions, but I think, ZAMEC is basically meant to ensure that, we regulate the media, and in terms of the timeline, it will depend on the current government, and we were promised today that they are submitting the bill to the Minister of Justice. It would be good to note that, ZAMEC will basically be a self-regulatory framework where journalists will vote for the board members of ZAMEC, and those board members will be able to appoint people at secretariats that will be able to, ensure that the self-regulation of the media. I've seen a comment on IBA. IBA is not a self-regulatory framework. It is a statutory framework. And if we can have the Independent Broadcasting Authority go back to what it was in the beginning, where the media bodies were suggesting names to the minister, and who was able to look at the names and appoint them, that would really work. Because we, like in the previous regime, we had just one journalist, sitting on IBA because of political interest. So we need to ensure that that is addressed. We also have to look at, the need for us to, get ZAMEC to into operationalization, because it is going to be, able to make journalists accountable. We need to reduce fake news, and we hope that ZAMEC will be able to liaise with platforms like Facebook, so that those media platforms where people can just wake up and open a page and start insulting people and defaming people, ZAMEC will be able to hold them accountable, in collaboration with, those who have set up those platforms. Yeah. So I think basically that. I don't know if I've left out any question.
Well, time is not really our best ally, Mr. Kabwe, and I would really plead with um, my producers that I think even next week, Wednesday, we can have you to talk about this, because there are so many things that are affecting the media, not only traditional media, talking about radio, TV, and newspaper, but also digital space which has come through. And obviously we have to talk about the plight of those that work in media houses, because mostly when we talk about the plight of media operators, we only talk about journalists, but we forget that apart from a journalist, there is a producer behind a journalist, there is an editor behind a journalist, and there are all these other people that make work easy for the journalist story to get broadcasted. So obviously I'll get to do that with the producers, plead with them that you come back next week Wednesday, and then we get to touch on these issues. But however, thank you so much for being part of tonight's program. I really appreciate that. Despite your busy time, at least you managed to come through and shed a bit more light about the ZAMEC bill. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So definitely, thank you so much to everybody that has been a part of the program as well. You've been watching on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and as well, you came through via the comments box. Thank you so much. We really appreciate. Join us tomorrow again right here on Ubuntu channel at 21 hours as we bring to you Pansaka. My name has been Sannie Banda, and stay blessed.